Welcome to DAM for Education at DAM Industry Week 2022. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce your conference chair for today, David Lipsey. David, over to you.
Tom, thanks so much. It's a delight to be here and always glad to welcome our community. And on that note, good morning or good afternoon or good evening. As we begin our day, I'd like to look at our roots in the language that brings us together. Etymologically, the word education derives from Latin words that mean a breeding, a bringing up, a rearing, from educo, I educate, I train, which is related to the homonym educo. Forgive me if I didn't remember my Latin exactly from boarding school. I lead forth, I take out, I raise up, I erect, and from out of, and I lead, and I conduct. Education means to lead out the internal hidden person and hidden talent of a person. So let's add, or an institution. Today, we are all about this, but it's not I, it's us. It has been, and it will always be us. We together are the community that brings practice and purpose to lead and conduct. We welcome you to the world's second exclusive event exclusively devoted to education and digital asset management. We are here today, we're online today, and also on course to have a lively day exclusively focused on educational institutions and the content assets that animate them. The idea of community reminds us of the many people who have lived here and celebrated here before us. The happenstance of my presence in the riparian forest along the Potomac River was preceded by the Nacotchtank Indians, an indigenous Algonquin peoples here in the Washington, D.C. area. We know that inclusion and knowledge through generations and distance dates long before us, and we honor this. Well, it would be fair to say that while growing up, the hard sciences and I were not particularly close friends, but I've been a student of the geometry of DAM, from the earliest rudimentary founding principles of create once and use many, to our axiomatic formula of the binary plus metadata plus rights. We know that we know a lot. And yet, in so many ways, we know we have a lot more damn science to go. That's why we are here. Today, we begin with an impactful and lessons to be learned update from Notre Dame on their DAM and NAM journey, masterfully led. And if we had a picture of the chalkboard where Scott first wrote his formulas and compared it to today, well, Scott would need a great big piece of street chalk and he'd be coloring the interstates all around South Bend. His experiences are then complemented by insights from USC, aptly titled, If I Knew Then What I Know Now. Boy, talk about another axiom for what we do in DAM. We look more deeply this year with the help of Cricket Media at new developments that define and nurture the educational media supply chain. This continues as we welcome an update from the University of Central Arkansas and two professionals who've had the privilege to work in DAM in many, many educational settings. We conclude with an innovative approach to DAM shared for us by a leading not-for-profit educational publisher who exemplified the meaning of the word education to bring to light opportunity and insight for purposeful change. In this case, by discovering the DAM capability model and using this to map their change management and technology acquisition strategy. Kristen's journey reminds me of Davis Sabel's award-winning book, Longitude, the story of a lone genius who solved the greatest scientific problem of his time. Kristen's use of the DAM capability model was a version of using the DAM chronometer to avoid the rocky shoals of DAM and arrive at ever correct and changing destinations. Now, if we could only have the AI engines generate the correct conditional asset profile and metadata for all of these digital assets that go into the magic sorting hat, which I digress, maybe someday. The impact of the digital world was moving quickly before the pandemic focused our attention to teaching and living acutely in a hybrid world. For our DAM Day together, we explore what was already underway, the meaning of digital both outside and inside the classroom. As we get started, let's set the broad basis for why we are here and for the outcomes we seek. For educational institutions and the supply chain vital to this, we frame this in three ways. First, return on investment, our most traditional conversation with executives. We think of this as table stakes. And the provocative question is, do you ever revisit ROI and walk back the cat to tie the actualities of what happened to what you told the CFO when this got approved? Second, and this is so important for us, return on initiative. In our world of educational institutions, of museums and libraries and archives, of service organizations, we measure our impact by our mission and our mandate, not by profit and loss. For DAM, we tie our investment to looking at our charters. Do we better service our students and our educational missions? Our provocative question here is, how do we measure achieving better the outcomes we are here to serve? And third, return on information. We live in a data-centric world. Our DAM systems contain data as a separate concept from the metadata. Our provocative question, can we use the data we generate as an information asset that helps us to better accomplish our mission? Something as simple as most popular school marketing video or most popular image can yield insight for future campaigns and for future success. DAM doesn't stop when the school bell rings or the books or the Zoom close. The semester ends and the cap and gown go quietly to rest until next year. DAM never stops. Digital doesn't know summer break or spring break, summer school or spring break. The institutional digital doors are always open and welcome an engaged and ever-growing world. In this digital world, we have platform 8 3/4 all over the place. And these digital quarks just move right through the brick and mortar. Our wayfinding skills on and off campus are not where's the student center or where's the library. Our wayfinding skills are to the digital worlds that we manage in service of the student center and the library and the athletic department and the campus bookstore and more and more and more. We value the help of our community. We do so in tandem with our lead sponsors and our exhibitors, our deeply experienced consultants, and the staff who are here, so to speak, from Henry Stewart, who work with unfailing courtesy and focus for all of us here today. Let us reflect as we listen together that DAM starts today at the place where those who went before us spent so many years to arrive at. We start there. And in that context, welcome to DAM for Education, part of our Industry Week. We thank you, attendees from all across the globe who celebrate all things digital asset management, and our sponsors for supporting the event. Please visit them throughout the conference via the exhibition tab to find out more. During the sessions, we encourage you to chat with fellow attendees and of course make the most of our expert speaker lineup by submitting your questions using the Q&A panel on the right side of the screen. You can also use the chat tab to get the conversation going and navigate to the lounge tab where you can participate in real-time networking with industry peers. If at any point during the event you need assistance from the Henry Stewart team, please use the chat bot at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Finally, we're delighted for the return of Henry Stewart's in-person events for the DAM and creative operations communities in New York, London, and Los Angeles, with the safety of attendees, excuse me, speakers and sponsors as our top priority. Registrations are open. So now on with the show. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Scott Rinehart from Notre Dame Studios. as he takes us through from its small beginnings in athletics, how asset management is taking hold at the University of Notre Dame. Scott, over to you to introduce yourself, and I'll be back to help during the Q&A.
Oh, great. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here today and to be a part of the Henry Stewart Conference. And it's really wonderful to see how this damn world that was so burgeoning 25 years ago has finally taken hold, and that companies and universities are finally starting to see the value that digital asset management holds for everybody. And I just wanted to share that up front. What I'm going to share today is what my experience has been here, how we have grown asset management and where we think it's going to go. One of the things that we're not going to be able to talk about is the explosion of content on the teaching side and how that is being managed. That may come into this area at some point, but right now that's run by a separate team that is specifically focused on teaching and learning and how students learn. So there is in my mind, there's a very hard line between those two areas. Oops, got there. So just a little bit of background about how we got started here at the University of Notre Dame. I've been here since 2012, but the university really recognized the issue somewhere back around 2008, that the explosion of digital content on campus was not a problem, it was a benefit, but getting their hands around it and how to locate things was really starting to become a problem. So I ended up at a conference and ran into my boss, and he was looking for somebody that was doing this stuff, and here I came in 2012. But it was funny because I didn't come in on the university side of things so much. I came in athletics as part of a new group called Fighting Irish Digital Media. This was a facility that was built as a prototype for campus to show campus what could be done, not only in the world of video production, but in digital asset management. And we were very fortunate that we had a great champion in our vice president and director of athletics, Jack Swarbrick, who had noticed out there that for the 20 teams and 16 sports that we had, that things were changing, that broadcasts were happening, more broadcasts were happening. The university was being asked to broadcast more things. Social media was starting to accelerate. And what that turned into was more content was needing to be managed and put into production. And that was really the starting point for it. How do we do this with a small crew there was 4 of us, I believe, at the time. But the first problem we ran into, which is one I think most people in this world of DAM had run into, is the language was difficult to deal with. Trying to define what we were going to call things, structure for file names, all of those sorts of things. What were we going to call it? For example, my go-to one on language goes back to my days in golf, where you're logging a shot on golf, and the ball is it a hazard, a sand trap, or a bunker? And we had to really start training people to get used to using similar language to describe things, because we were bringing students in to do the majority of the logging because the staff was busy doing the previous bullet point of broadcasts. So that was where we started. And the thing that we thought about from the beginning, from the day we opened Fighting Irish Digital Media, was we thought about the enterprise of campus. How does this facility with its capabilities scale to benefit campus? And that's one of the things I think it's interesting here at the University of Notre Dame, is that thought goes into lots and lots of decisions here. We try very hard to break down the inherent silos that are within a university. So we'll talk more about that in a bit. So that was how Notre Dame Studios, where I work today, came into play. About a year after we opened in 2012, there was a project that was happening around the football stadium to add 750,000 square feet of multi-purpose space, everything from classrooms, student services, music program, classroom space, as well as a media production facility for campus. So we started talking about how do we do that? So just as a quick overview and going back to know where we are. So who are we? Well, when we were created, it was really to think through the question of why build silos around campus? Why would this college and university build a video production facility or build an asset management facility that's not centrally coordinated in order to help the university as a whole? And that is, if you've ever been in a university environment, my father-in-law was in higher ed for his entire career. And he counseled me when I was coming here that, you have to be concerned about that those silos are there and they are very, very real. But when Notre Dame Studios came to be a central location to provide this array of media production, we started really, the way we got traction at the beginning was with live shots, with professors going to CNN or the BBC or anybody else in the news. When we could provide those services for them and the professors would come in and they're like, wow, I don't have to drive 25 minutes to another TV station. I just walk over here, sit down, do my thing and walk out. It's like, yeah, that's what we can do. And that's been at least my mantra to people. It's like, let's find a way to help people. Just expose them to our services. And once they get in the door, they see what we're doing and it does spark conversations. And the key phrase, again, for us is being a resource for campus. We want to be the place for people to come to in order to help pursue Notre Dame's mission into the world. And if you want to learn more about us, we're happily living on the web at studios.nd.edu. And you can take a look and see all the interesting things that we get into. So once we decided to move forward with Notre Dame Studios, well, what happened? Again, the university has recognized the problem and we go out and start talking to people. And where to start was always the initial question. Where do I go? And that's like, well, where are you? Do you have any sort of organization at all? What are you trying to get done? What are you trying to accomplish while you're doing, while we talk about this asset management program? ND Studios, we're the folks to do it. But the key with this was what we learned from athletics, which was by far the most difficult client that we have. And I don't mean difficult in terms of troublesome. I mean difficult in terms of standardization, volume of content has grown exponentially every single year. And then trying to build workflows that support that. So in our version of asset management, it's not just tagging and locating content. It's dealing with the formats that they shoot in, which is everything under the sun, because they're a very innovative group and they want to be at the forefront of creating compelling content for the fans, recruits, and student athletes that we have here. How do we take so it's discoverable and then they can drop that content into their workflow? And the FIM, Fighting Irish Media, the athletics content now is by far the most difficult of all that. Same words mean something different in different places. We've learned that around campus as we talked, and like, well, that's interesting. And the thing that I would like to make sure everybody understands is that we are all learning all the time. No matter where we are in this journey of DAM and the journey of trying to get this stuff implemented, we can always learn from somebody else. And that has been a key piece to our success so far. But inside Notre Dame Studios, we had what we call resident users, where we have office space for folks to come in and work off of our centralized storage. We have 600 terabytes of online storage and a large tape library behind us, as well as moving up to the AWS cloud for content. But we're here to support them directly onto that storage mediums. So those were the starting point for us to talk to. At least that's what we thought. Interestingly enough, we had a call from a group called Notre Dame International, which takes care of all of our international student programs and our global gateways and our international presence around the globe. And interestingly enough, the question came up around a student photo contest. What they wanted to do was they wanted a better way to bring photos from students who are on their semester abroad programs, rather than sending them to a Google Drive where it all just gets lumped into one big folder. How can we do this better? We want to be able to get the photos submitted, identify who got them, where was this photo taken, what program are they in, all sorts of other information. How do we review it and create a workflow so that we can move the photo along, say, yep, we like it, or we reject it, and then they get to a winner and do it in a way in which the judges are not all together. And this was all pre-COVID stuff, so we were working on that then. So I went over there, sat down with them, says, what do you want? And they said, here's the information we want. So I did a little configuration while we were sitting there, put it up on the screen. And then he said, well, I don't like that. What about, can you do this? So we did it. And then this phrase came up a lot. Oh, you can do that? Well, that was the entree into it. Now we sparked interest in them by just listening to them, doing things and going and making some good suggestions. And the takeaway I'd like for people to have on this is just find a way in to help solve a problem. It may not be the problem that I want to get solved. I wanted something else with Notre Dame International, but that wasn't the way in. The way in was they had a problem, and is there a way for us to help them do that, help them fix that problem? So that was great success. And this is just a quick example of when a student goes to the web client and uploads a photo, all the content in red is required. And we force a lot of the language in this so that the country names are correct, the years are in the right format, and the categories. But this was all based on what they wanted, not what I wanted. And because it's what they wanted, they have continued to use it today. I believe we're 5 years into this now with them. And then we also built different catalogs for them in order to put other content in that wasn't related to the student program. So any sorts of photo media, anything that they want related to these different global networks, the research centers, their engagement programs around the world that they care about. We have been able to support that. As they grow, we can help them grow. And that is a wonderful partnership that we do have with Notre Dame International. And a quick side story on language, they wanted to have a checkbox for VIP. Fair enough. So knowing that we don't know everything, I said, well, what's a VIP? Well, that's an image or video that has one of the top 3 people of the university involved. President Jenkins, the provost, or the executive VP of the university. I said, well, that's interesting. Do you ever have events where a senior member of a government comes in, but one of the big 3 from the university is not there? They said, yeah. I said, would that person be a VIP? And you saw them sit back and they're like, yeah, I guess we would consider that. So through the dialogue, we were able to not use the VIP, actually not use the VIP checkbox that they wanted at the beginning, because it had a larger description, a larger impact on description that they had ever thought of. So then the ball started rolling along. One of our resident users here at the Martin Media Center at Notre Dame Studios was a new group that started a few years ago called the Grotto Network. And that's a network, it's a web-based program of outreach to young Catholics that may or may not be going to church to help them in their life's journey. So they're creating a lot of video content and still photo content. But the hook in this is that a few of the Grotto Network employees and videographers were athletics personnel, former athletics personnel, and they had used the program when we were in Fighting Irish Media. So the lesson here is that they were on board with it because they're like, yeah, this is awesome. We need to do this. So very quickly we go from the athletics group, because the people had moved across, we had that cross-pollination of personnel. And then they're like, we need to have this in order to do our job. So then those guys were on board. Well, in the same area of Notre Dame Studios, the university marketing group is here. So the photographers and videographers. And it's an open office type environment with cubes, and they all know each other. And they're like, oh, what are you guys doing? That's neat. Can we take a look at that? So then all of a sudden marketing is like, yeah, this would be great. We should do this rather than buying more and more G-RAID drives and not being able to share content. That was the big, I think that was the big piece of it, was that we were able to finally get people to realize that it was highly inconvenient to just put stuff on hard drives and have to share the drives, and that you had single copies, multiple points of failure in that, and that hard drives are not forever. And then back to athletics, all of a sudden the athletic teams are like, I have heard ... Why, yes, what can we help you with? So we're helping the athletic teams now manage a lot of their video content, especially as it relates to practices and game reels, I guess they call them, for their coaching needs. And that gets us into athletics has bought into this as a whole, and any athletic team can now participate in this program to help take care of their media. And two of the three big ones right now is we're doing work with our football team, as well as our men's and women's basketball team are the big three that we're helping to support. And then one day, the College of Architecture came in and heard about us, and they became our first big move onto the academy side of the university. They needed a workflow where they were tired of Google Drive because they couldn't find what they wanted. So we have provided them the ability to add information and to upload content. Amazingly enough, it gets uploaded to Google Drive, and then we have automation on our side that will bring all that content in, process it, and then make it available through our web client. And I was thinking, what in the world would the College of Architecture, what are they putting in? And what they're starting with, I was very surprised, but excited about, is the student projects are coming in so that their marketing people can more readily locate, access, and download and put into their production workflow those student projects, which I thought was interesting. And then we started doing work now with campus ministry, which is clearly, as a Catholic university, you can imagine the University of Notre Dame it's the core mission of the university. So we do that. So we record the masses that we do. We do Sunday masses with them, and we keep them for a period of 3 to 4 years. Funerals, weddings, we just help keep track of all that stuff in case somebody needs something. And then campus ministry with that core is starting to expand as well, with photos and other things as well. And then the development team is a recent, we're getting ready to onboard them. But talk about a group that's creating content that I never thought was doing it. They are an incredible, a massive creator of content. They are forever telling stories through all sorts of mediums that they can find. And we worked with them on other projects, but they became overwhelmed with the amount of content that they had and wanted to find a better way to do it. So back in the old days, going back to the silos, each one of those groups on this page would have done their own thing. They would have gone out, found a vendor. Is the vendor good or bad? That's up to them. But we could have ended up having, 6 or 7 different digital asset management systems on campus, and being able to consolidate that into one vendor in one place on campus that's managing it is going to ultimately benefit the university financially over the long term. And that's another one of our goals, is how do we provide that financial benefit for the university overall, rather than spend all the money on building 6 or 7 different things? Why don't we just build one and scale it accordingly? And so far, we've been able to do that. How big are we today? I just took a quick look in. We got about 18,000 catalogs of content, 2.3 million clips, 24 million clip fields, and 6 million thumbnails. That's a pretty hefty growth, I believe, as we're just getting started. The total amount of content that we're managing is well into the petabyte range. But it's been quite a run to get to this point. So in summary, what I want people to take away is, for those of us that are part of this call, I think we all see this clearly. We see the problem, we see a solution. We just don't understand why somebody doesn't see it and get on board and be with us right away. The problem is that it's a journey for other people to get this thing going. They have other competing interests, they have other cares, they have the, well, we've always done it this way syndrome. And sometimes you have to wait for that moment to be able to go in and say, yeah, I can help you with that problem. And I think that's an important part. Is some of it is patience. This has been a 10-year journey here at Notre Dame. It takes time for people to understand the value that we can drop in. It's not that we can just mandate it and they're going to love it, because that's a horrible way to try to make this to go. And a big piece of this is being able to dedicate a team to focus on this. You've got to be able to spend time talking to people, understanding. It's the old adage of 2 ears, 1 mouth. Spend more time listening than talking. You listen, you create, you iterate, you display it, you iterate again. It's very rarely, I don't think I've ever had it. Yeah, I can say this. I don't think we have ever deployed it version 1, and that's what they're using today. There's always molding to things, always changing needs and priorities will happen. As they start using the system, they start seeing, oh, well, it does this, can I do that? And then you go in and you say, yes, I can help you with that. And that ties into this one, which is the language structure and workflows. Everything takes time and effort, and we should not kid ourselves. It takes a lot of time and effort to get this stuff done, but that's why they've hired us. They've hired us to do it. What's exciting now is that there's so many more people. This is not version 1 of digital asset management anymore, when we were all trying to figure out what it was and how it worked. Those things are now there, which is to this point, which is, while this has been a long journey, and it really has been, but now when somebody comes in and says, I would like some assistance, we now have enough knowledge, and we're in an advanced point of knowledge with everything that we've learned so far, that we can be able to help people right out of the gate. Our workflows, it's customized to each client. Do they just want stuff to stay on tier 1 storage? Great, that's one price point for our services. Do you want it to go with proxies, with your high res sitting on LTO tape on the backside? That's one option. Do you want 2 LTO tapes for safety? You could. Or do you want to put one up in the cloud as your disaster recovery piece? And trying to educate people on the differences of our language in this asset management world, for example, between a disaster recovery copy and a backup copy. They don't understand those words. And it's important that we get them to understand them, because it is important. Because my takeaway on a lot of this, after a long time of doing this, is it's expensive to create this content. They are spending a good amount of money in order to create this content, to edit it, to distribute it, to do what they do with it. And I feel like it's our responsibility to be able to reach across campus and to be able to help those people be able to preserve that stuff as long as they can, as long as they want to. and then the extension of what we're doing now is now we're in the foundational stage, believe it or not, of, okay, now we have all this content. What do we do with it after in alignment with the university's digital retention policies? I'm not the ultimate archive of the university. We're essentially a production tool for the content creators. But how does that content now, this is the question that we're working on now and have not answered yet, is how do we tie into the university archives itself to be able to take the 5% of stuff that is created by the content creators, having those creators move it over to the archives, and then the archives can make the final decision as to what they want to keep that is significant to the history of the university. That's our extension of where we're at today. And once we can get there, I think we will be providing a circular service to the university that will grow and grow from there. So David kind of hit the end of that. It's always, as you know, I love this group. I think it's fabulous that we have so many people now that are participating in this program. And the fact that we really seem to have a lot of momentum in this world right now for digital asset management and the universities.
Well, we do, and you've been part of that, which is appreciated. And were you to see, you can go ahead and stop you. Yes, okay. Were you to see the global journey of where we're connected to today, it just brings joy. So we have time for, we're going to do 2 flashcard questions for you, Scott. Are you ready? Okay,
but
so
fire away.
All right, so we've had a few questions come in that I'll aggregate, and we'll thank you so much for the questions you've asked. Comment a bit about rights, and how you adjudicate them. And a flashcard style. I know there's much, we could do a whole session on this, but
yeah. Well, we don't make those decisions. That's really up to the general counsel's office and contracts that may be in place. So for athletics, it's complicated on the athletic side because of the deals that you have with groups like ESPN and the ACC network for broadcast rights. The broadcast itself is straightforward because that's in a contract. It's always the E&G stuff that's shot to the side that's generally in question.
Yeah.
In terms of content that's shot by the university would own that. That's based on usual employee contracts. The interesting ones would be, the photos that the students take and they submit for the photo contest. Mm-hmm. Do they retain those rights? That I don't know the answer to. And that's also something that we're not tracking on that either.
Interesting. Yeah, the rights, in that axiomatic formula about metadata, binary, and rights, the rights one keeps just unfolding in its own way. Okay, flashcard question 2. I love this question. How do you handle being able to find a person versus a building that has essentially the same name? For example, John Glenn on campus versus the John Glenn College of Public Affairs. I love this question.
For us, the way our fields are organized, that would be through whichever field the information would go into. So we would search into a particular field as opposed to the entire database bucket in order to pull that out. The other thing that I've learned over time is that our role is not necessarily to give the person the exact content that they're after. Our role is to put them into the neighborhood and to give them a lot of options that they may not have noticed before. Oh, that's interesting. I searched for John Glenn. I didn't realize there was a building named after him, for example. And that can tie into the story that I'm telling for somehow. But to the specific part of that question, for us, it would be through the fields that we use and how we segment out the data.
Great, thanks for that. Well, there are more questions that came in, and several of them rotated around what you were commenting on about archives and records management, and the ever-present need to be sure that we're paying strict attention to preservation and preservation's role and complement to asset management and asset liquidity. Always a very interesting thing and a bit of a conundrum, but a lot of opportunities. So
Yeah, the big thing, David, with that real quick is that without all of this base work for the last 10 years to get to where we are today,
right.
we had no ability to move forward with that question.
Yeah.
Now we have a bucket of content that we can actually work with now with the library or with the archive.
And I hope if we get the chance to see you in New York City at Henry Stewart or virtually again at our next Dam for Education Global Conference, that we'll get some updates on that and some of the other interesting questions. It's been so neat for me, Scott, to professionally help develop insights from your journey over these last 10 years. Thank you for the sharing. It's critical.
Sure. It's my pleasure. I hope somebody got some benefit from it. That's
well,
I'm never really sure if it matters, but here's where I've been.
Thanks so much. It's great to see you again.
It's always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, David.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
So next up here at Dam Industry Week, we're going to hear from Deborah Holmes Wang on dam migration. If I knew then what I know now. That session will start in about 4 or 5 minutes. Thank you for participating. We're glad you're here, and I'll be talking with you again after Deborah's session.